Welcome to my lecture, funded by the Eurasia Foundation from Asia. Thank you very much for joining me today on this presentation on myth to simulation, a theory of everything in David O'Reilly's video game, Everything. This lecture is about the work of David O'Reilly, who is an Irish filmmaker and animator, and building on recent research on posthumanist and neo-materialist thought. The presentation considers a technopoetic consciousness that blurs the distinction between the natural and artificial, that is, the human-made, and pays attention to small but significant natural elements like silica in particular, and their deep influence on the development of human life and more recently digital culture. The presentation explores Everything, which is a video game and a short created by Irish filmmaker David O'Reilly. And it's interesting because it does allow player perception to be shifted across different scales, considering a relational understanding of existence and challenging anthropocentric perspective with implications in ecocultural education and gamification trends. So, as I mentioned, O'Reilly is an Irish-born artist, animator, filmmaker, and he's known for his distinctive and innovative work. His style is characterized by minimalism and experimental visuals, and he contributed, for example, to the film Her, which appeared in 2013. And he animated some of the sequences in the film, as you can see on your screen. The movie, the animated short, and the video game, Everything, was created in the course of 4 years, and it was funded by O'Reilly, and it encapsulates the short encapsulates the experience of the video game, and it premiered at Berlin Film Festival, and it earned an Oscar nomination in 2017. It's an immersive exploration of micro and macroscopic universe, and enables players to engage symbiotically with a vast array of entities. The game incorporates role-play, free play, and simulation, and it allows users to approach reality from all these diverse perspectives, enabling emergent self-organizing interactions as well, because the game experience can advance without direct human intervention. In his review from 2017, Nathan Grayson described how the game continues autonomously when it's left unattended, not emphasizing these inactive agencies of nature and existence. And the quotation is from his review, how it explains how it jumps from object to object, and it gives a huge number of ways in which we could experience existence. Everything foregrounds a deep ecological and neo-materialist perspective, as we have mentioned, because it draws attention to the interconnectedness of material and immaterial, as well as the organic and the inorganic. It allows players to navigate the cosmos from all these different perspectives, and ranging from the very basic chemical elements and microscopic bacteria to bigger bodies in the cosmos, now creating a sense of fluidity that reorients the player's perception of selfhood, scale, and agency. It positions the player in the middle, destabilizing the conventional subject-object dichotomy, and offering an experience in which the player perceives themselves as part of the broader continuum of life. This immersive speciality of the game encourages the contemplation of experience in relation to everything else, situating the player as an observer, attuned with particular attention to their surroundings, and fostering a phenomenological sense of awareness and mutual dependency, where all entities coexist symbiotically. In contrast to traditional video games that often emphasize goal-oriented processes and linear narratives, everything invites the player to adopt a kind of contemplative stance, where players come to perceive themselves as integral parts of a complex, ever-changing web. Everything presents a universe where players can explore and inhabit various entities, as we mentioned, ranging from the minuscule, like atoms and molecules, to the vast, like galaxies. And the players control a variety of creatures and objects, with the scale shifting dramatically as one zooms in and out of the game world. The player is placed in 7 different scales, and the game allows movement between all these different perspectives. This continuous shifting encourages the contemplation of how systems vastly varied from scale to scale. There is also a non-linear time in the game. It plays with the notion that time is tied to the scale at which the player operates, and that the passing of time is perceived differently from the point of view of a single blade of grass, for example, versus the perspective of a planet. No, and this adds a layer of philosophical depth to the understanding of the game. As we mentioned, the player can simultaneously experience multiple points of view, and from a pebble to a galaxy. And this multiplicity of perspectives reinforces the notion of time and space as not fixed dimensions, as dependent on the perspective. There is also a sense of a cyclical time, where certain patterns repeat themselves, aligning with the changes in the natural world, no? Almost as organisms reproduce and life cycles unfold. No? This repetition suggests an eternal recurrence of processes, regardless of the scale. No? And it seems to, where these small cycles seem to echo at a cosmic scale as well. So the game mirrors philosophical themes. We have mentioned interconnectedness, the relativity of perspective, and also the insignificance of individual existence within this larger framework of the entire universe. No, and these elements evoke various philosophical schools. Some of them Western, like, for example, the views of cyclic history exposed by Giambattista Vico or Mircea Eliade, but also, in particular, Eastern philosophies and Zen. Specifically, the philosophies of Alan Watts, who was a British American philosopher, known for popularizing Eastern philosophy in the West, playing a very important role in this game, because it's his recorded lectures serve as the philosophical backbone to the game. Alan Watts synthesized Zen Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism in Western thought, and he spoke of the fluid nature of everything. No, he also contemplated life as a journey and as a dance, and trying to dissolve the boundaries between the humans and the rest of the universe. And this is what the game tries to do. everything speaks of the inseparability of all things and talks about how everything exists in relation to everything else. So, and the player is always situated in the middle of all this otherness. The quote that opens the short film, the short animated film, that exemplifies the video game, begins with this quotation from Watts. Every creature in the universe that is in any way sensitive and in any manner of speaking conscious regards itself as being. That is to say, it knows and is aware of a hierarchy of beings above it and a hierarchy of beings below it. That is to say that whatever you are and whoever you are in the middle. And this is interesting also because the 3D format of the game immerses the players precisely within the game world. Unlike two-dimensional formats, which contemplate a screen from the outside, 3D places the game, the player in the middle of the whole experience. And this is spatial positioning aligns with this idea that existence is not hierarchical, but relational, and that every entity exists in relation to others. By navigating the different scales, from the microscopic to the cosmic, the player experiences being both subject and object, dissolving the notion of a fixed center in the game. And so this echoes recent neo-materialists and also post-humanist approaches, such as the one presented by Jane Bennett in her book Vibrant Matter, A Political Ecology of Things, where she notes that inorganic matter often appears motionless because its transformation occurs at a speed or level beyond human perception. And she also argues that matter has a vitality, and that even inorganic substances possess a kind of agency, influencing or interacting with their surroundings in a way that challenge anthropocentric perspectives. So this is also reflected in the quotations from Alan Watts, like, for example, this one from We Are as Organism. You look at something with a naked eye and see it in a certain way. You look at it with a telescope and you see it in another way. Which level of magnification is the correct one? Well, obviously they are all correct. They are just different points of view. You can, for example, look at a newspaper photograph under a magnifying glass, and where with the naked eye you will see a human face, with a magnifying glass you will see just a profusion of dots rather than meaningless scatter. But as you stand away from the collection of dots, which all seem to be separate and apart from each other, they suddenly arrange themselves into a pattern. And you see that these individual dots add up to some kind of sense. So this is what happens in everything. And this is the idea that it's behind Jane Bennett's book, Vibrant Matter. Similarly, the theory known as material engagement theory, which was put forth by Oxford scholar Lambros Malaforis, argues that humans think through things and that objects actively shape our cognitive processes rather than being merely passive tools. And Malaforis illustrates this with the idea of the potter's wheel and clay. He emphasizes how the interaction between the hand, the tool, and the material, in this case the plasticity of clay, co-creates thought and form. And all these ideas, again, resonate in everything where players inhabit and think as objects, dissolving the boundary between self and matter. Echoing, again, Jane Bennett's concept of vibrant matter as well. And on your screen, you can see the two books by Malaforis, How Things Shape the Mind, published by MIT Press, and The Cognitive Life of Things as well. Right, and other scholars who are claiming similar points of are Simon, for example. She's known for her work on material feminism and environmental humanities, and her concept of transcorporeality, which emphasizes the interconnectedness between human bodies and the material world. She rejects the notion that bodies are separate from their environment, and she argues that human corporality is deeply intertwined with other forms of matter, ecological systems, inorganic substances, and so on. And again, this echoes Alan Watts' ideas, no? And the quotation that you have there from Work as Play is not only that every little organism that exists depends on its environment, the reverse is also true, that the total environment depends on each and every one of those little organisms, so that you can say that this universe consists of an arrangement or pattern in which every event is essential to the whole thing. So the repetition of the idea of the pattern, no? And also the dissolving of rigid boundaries between individual selves and the rest of the world, no? And how this is also reinforcing the fact that humans are not the only agents in the world, but they are enmeshed within a dynamic material continuum that also act upon the world, no? And this is a quotation from Stacia Lyman, emphasizing how we should imagine human corporality beyond this sense of physicality, and imagine it as a transcorporeality where the human is always intermeshed with the modern human world. And on the left of your screen, you can actually see some of her books. So Alan Watts was speaking about many of these ideas present in neo-materialist theories and post-humanism in the 60s and the 70s. And when he is emphasizing this idea that existence is not something isolated, it's not just an isolated event, but that is part of this continuum of life, and that it's also not something externally imposed by some kind of creator molding clay, but is crafted as part of an emergent self-organizing process, no? Ideas that align with philosophical traditions, particularly Taoism and Buddhism. And we have another quotation there which summarizes how Watts proposes the idea that the universe is a dynamic and interdependent whole, no? Where all the things participate equally, no? You don't really have to suppose that the world is a kind of helpless, passive, unintelligent junk, which an outside agency has to inform and make into intelligent shapes. The picture of the world in the most sophisticated physics of today is not from stuffed potted clay. And the reference resonates clearly with myths of creation, where in many parts of the world we have these myths where we have some kind of divine agency creating the world from clay, right? This idea is challenging, as I have mentioned, not only post-humanism, not only human-centered thinking, but also agency appears in all kind of living and non-living entities. Right, so it doesn't place the humans at the center of existence. So in this sense, it's challenging traditional and post-humanism does, no? So agency, as we are repeating, is not exclusive humans, but emerges from the interactions between the biological, ecological, and also artificial systems, the one that humans create. No? And this is also evident in the interest in robotics, which it appears in ancient thought and comes to our days in, for example, the works of Catherine Hayes, how she is talking about how we became posthumans and how this is related to the development of cybernetics and digital systems, and also her most recent book from 2017, The Unthought, The Power of the Cognitive Non-Conscious, where she argues that um, uh, other creatures, which might be artificial, for example, might have cognitive powers, even if those cognitive powers are non-conscious. They are not aware of those. Not only animals can have this, but also she's talking about digital systems and artificial intelligence. So this is also the trend in scholars talking about the singularity. For example, Ray Kurzweil, who was director of engineering at Google between 2012 and 2020, during which time he was working on artificial intelligence and machine learning. And he published a book in 2005, and then a sequel only last year, in which he's talking about the singularity, the merging between the tools that man creates, how they initially were external to the body, and how eventually they become incorporated into the body, and at one point the human becomes the very technology. So returning to everything, to this game and the short that explores the video game, one of the key aspects is the notion of recursion, of how this time is a cyclic time. This universal kind of scheme is a cyclic space and a cyclic time where things are repeating themselves, and almost like an algorithmic pattern. And what's claimed in many of his lectures, that life is a dance, and that when you're dancing, you're not trying to get anywhere, but you're just dancing within the pattern of existence, the dance of things and signs. No, in life's dance of forms and signs, dancers need to learn to choreographically position themselves in the middle, no, in a habitat that is simultaneously material and immaterial. In other words, experiential, but also virtual, that is conceptual and symbolic, no, as signs, right? And so again, going back to the image of the divine potter shaping reality from clay and from the outside, in this new kind of creation, the creator is reminiscent of Plato's demiurge. Is almost like an engineer who encodes these algorithmic instructions, like, for example, the Fibonacci sequences that we can find in nature, no, and that they are able of self-replication without further divine intervention, no. So it's interesting that in everything in this game we can find this expression of the poiesis of the algorithm, almost. And here you have some examples of how the myth of the potter god was exemplified in many different cultures across the world. and going back to Egyptian culture and even before, and in Prometheus man from clay, and how in Plato we have these replicative or auto-replicative forms of intelligence, which are almost mathematical, and um, um, they where the creator is introducing some sort of mathematical patterns that replicate themselves without further intervention of this initial creator. And I want to shift now to the question of play in more detail and at the end of this lecture, because in fact clay, it's an interesting element, because clay minerals have been found to form the very basis of life itself. It has been found that their compounds form a substance known as hydrogel, which is a polymeric structure, and that it occurs in the synthesis of proteins in DNA, for example. And in the 60s, there was research for which the Nobel Prize was awarded, no, to, for example, James Watson, Francis Crick, and Maurice Wilkins, no, who discovered the molecular structure of DNA, no, and how they saw how this element of silicon and clay forms was basic to life. And you have there some additional readings on how clay minerals were so important in life. And it's interesting because it continues to be used in industry and elementary, my dear Watson. It's one of the most important elements. It's the second most important element on the Earth after oxygen, and it's very versatile in the industry. It was used from antiquity, in fact, in construction, also to record forms of writing, ancient writing, cuneiform writing, and so on, in glassmaking, and so on. So this presence of silica is in nearly everything. And of course, it's also present in the digital world. The name Silicon Valley is not just chance. And it's used in semiconductors, it's used in all the materials for many of the technologies that we're still using, and it's also, of course, part of the human body. So games, like everything, play a significant role in shaping behavior and attitudes through the process of gamification, where in educational settings, the mechanics are applied to non-game context to influence awareness and pro-social behavior and engagement, promoting sustainable practices. So the emphasis, for example, on how the most elementary elements like clay, like silica, are important, and how everything is related to everything else, and the human is just part of this a huge network of connections. This is very important, and a very important idea conveyed in this game, no, which presents this exploration, no, of the gradual realization of this interconnectedness between everything that exists. And this is unlike other games, because it doesn't focus those task complexion. It's rather like, as I have mentioned before, it's rather like situating the player in the middle of all this, and it's almost like a contemplative philosophical experience. The game, it's gives you this kind of experience, no? and also the fact that it offers this autopoietic aspect that the game evolves without the player's direct input. It's almost like if the game is subtly criticizing human and need to dominate and manage nature. So the game instead shows that it can go on by itself without human intervention. No? So as a conclusion, we can affirm that David O'Reilly's everything it resonates with these post-humanist and neo-materialist perspectives that try to decenter human subjectivity and try to show the integrate entanglements between human and more than human forces. So thank you very much for listening to my lecture. I am Lopez-Varela, delivering for Eurasia Foundation series of lectures. Thank you very much.